Father Becker, Reverend Fathers, Fortress business leaders, honored guests, and my dear brothers. So, my vocation story started like any others in the home. I was blessed to be born to devoted Catholic parents, Catholic family, German Catholic farming community. Everything's hunky-dory. It wasn't really so. Growing up, the faith was something that was practiced. It was kind of very mandatory to go on Sundays to Mass. That was not optional. And it was good. We prepared for meals, other predictable moments. We share the faith when necessary, but I didn't really feel like something that was a relationship I didn't really see. Growing up, went to CCD, didn't really learn a whole lot. Maybe you can share the same experience. High school, youth group, that's when I began to grow in my relationship with the Lord, began to see what a relationship looks like, what communion with Father and the Holy Trinity looks like. My philosophy in high school was kind of pray when needed, otherwise don't worry about it. And so Mass was something I began to take a little more seriously. The engineering in high school was something I found a keen interest in, and I pursued that all the way up through college. Faith was about doing things, but it wasn't really much of a living experience. But at that point, I didn't have that relationship, and so I would have remained stagnant had God not broken into my life. So I went to the local university, Grand Valley State University. Father Whitlock knows what that's like. So I commuted there because it was practical, and it went well. The first year went well. The friends from high school had started to fade away, and so the loneliness started to set in. And after the first year, things went downhill pretty fast. Began to realize that I was really missing that relationship. I didn't have that. And faith wasn't something that kind of firmly grounded my life. And so the grades started to plummet. Got very anxious. I wasn't a huge partier. I remained faithful in a Sunday obligation. So on the outside, everything looked fine. I was participating and helping with the youth ministry. So I was learning about the faith, but it wasn't something that was in my heart. So the second year, that began to really affect me. Toward the end of my second year at Grand Valley, began to feel really anxious. Wasn't really feeling that well. I had started to get a little bit nauseous and whatever. And so I was stuck in sin, and I was feeling quite miserable overall with the lack of relationships in my life, lack of relationship with God. And things were going downhill very quickly. So as exams approached in the spring semester in 2014, a long time ago, I began to feel, like I said, very nauseous. Anxiety was increasing. I knew that a lot of my exams I'd have to be studying for. Anyways, I began to throw up a lot. And so I was like, okay, that's probably just a normal side effect. And like a good engineer, just kind of ignore it and just continue working on what duty is. And we get more and more frequent. First it was every month, then every 2 weeks, then every week, and then soon it got just to every day and every hour. And it got really bad. And so after a while, I'm like, this isn't normal. I had to go to the ER and then up to the hospital. 3 days later, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And if you guys would know what that is, Crohn's disease is it's a gastrointestinal disorder, and instigated for different reasons for different people. For me, it's stress. And so God, at that moment, I didn't realize at the time, but He was kind of forcing me to face my interior poverty that I had. And so that was tough. And after that summer, following that spring semester, began to, in subtle ways, notice that interior poverty and do things to fix that. Faith was, first of all, on my mind. I began to devote myself more consciously toward what youth group was for me. I went on a mission trip to northern Minnesota called Leech Lake, and it was fantastic. And at that point, I kind of saw what faithful Catholics were and are. And parents have really been great. I had some great youth ministers to also help with that, but began to see what someone I could relate to a little bit more what that faith looked like. and I began to take a lot of, began to appreciate what the church is a lot more. And with the teachings, I began to really fall in love with. So after that, slowly but surely, I began to pursue the Lord. Late night adoration hours, learning about the faith. I spent a lot of time just listening to podcasts, and I didn't realize it, but I was falling in love with the church. So it sounds like I'm heading to seminary at this point, but it wasn't quite yet. So I was still focusing on that, seeking that peace, the interior poverty that I was missing, that I was needing as a physical necessity at that point with my Crohn's disease. And I had met a lot of youth ministers throughout my time as I began to grow more in the faith and learn more about people and seeing what a relationship with Christ looked like. I wasn't sure what that was. They had something. I just couldn't see what it was. And it was just faith. That's all it was. And then I saw that and I wanted it. So I was chasing after what they had. And then in 2015, a good friend, youth minister, Chris Applet, he had brought me to Mundelein Seminary just to visit for a weekend because apparently he saw something of a seminarian in me. And we went there, and that weekend seminary happened to be out. And if you've ever been to Mundelein, it's a beautiful campus. It's the colonial architecture, and it's on this lake, peaceful. You would think it's in the middle of the woods, but it's in the middle of suburbs of Chicago in reality. But it's a beautiful place. And since seminary was out, there was just nothing going on, just silence all weekend. And I recognized peace in my life like I've never recognized before. And that's where I recognized that, like, God might be calling me to be a priest. I didn't want to recognize that at the moment, but that was true. And so my interior poverty, I just felt alive again. I had that desire beginning, kindled for the priesthood, and I was fostering that, letting it grow. The one thing I hadn't had that moment was like an actual relationship on earth with a girl. And so I was talking to a girl at the moment, and great woman, beautiful Catholic woman, and I decided I'm going to give it one last shot before God drags me into seminary. I'm going to give it one last shot. And so I did. And I think there's some good reasons for that too. And we had a good relationship, 5 months. Everything was fine. She was a great woman. But I was still missing something. I was still not finding that peace that I was needing. And so, after 5 months, I broke it off, and I had found that peace. I was still thinking about the priesthood throughout the whole relationship, and after I broke it off, I knew I needed to talk to the vocations director. So I did. I went to talk to Father Ron in late 2015, and I applied for seminary. I wasn't sure if I was going to get in. My grades had not been good at Grand Valley, and so at my old university, I got in after a few months, and I took that as a sign to come to seminary. And so after that, I just knew this is where I was called to be. This is where I needed to be. And God's been with me every step of the way, whether I recognized him or not. It's been a beautiful journey. Not been easy, but it's been definitely worth it. And for all that, I can only say, praise be Jesus Christ. Amen.